Good evening and welcome to Steve Ray's True Crime Podcast. I'm joined this evening by Seamus Devlin, who is a BKB fighter. Good evening, mate.
Good evening, Steve. Nice to be acquainted, my friend. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, good to see you, mate. Good to have you on. And as always, we get people on, not necessarily who are former criminals, but people who've just got an interesting story to tell. And you certainly have obviously done a little bit of research on you before we got you on. And the BKB fascinates me. Obviously, I've been to see it, I've been to watch it, and got a few friends who either partaken in the actual fighting side of it or have promoted it. So we'll come to that a little bit later. Just let's get a little bit of background on you first, and we'll possibly get questions from people who are watching as well. So let's see how it goes. Where were you born? Where were you brought up, mate?
I was born in a small town called Padiham. It's in County Lancashire in the northwest of England. It's an old mill town. It's just outside Burnley. I think people will be more familiar with Burnley. That's famous for cotton and gin-boing. But I live in a small, quaint town. I was raised by two God-fearing parents. My father was an Irish Republican. My mother, she was born and raised in Blackpool. Just a quiet upbringing, really, mate. A quiet upbringing. I've got 6 siblings. I grew up with 3 of them as immediate family. It's a nice, quiet upbringing.
Happy childhood?
Very happy, mate. Very placid. Very, very happy. Yeah, it was indeed.
And what about school life? I mean, were you into sports and that when you were younger?
Do you know what? That's a funny thing, Steve. I really wasn't. I wasn't the athletic type. I was very average at everything. I was pretty average academically. I think that was due to the fact that I never really applied myself 100%. But yeah, sport, I wasn't really very athletic. That's why when you ask people close to me, they wouldn't have told you that this would have been my career choice or this is where I'd have ended up, because I didn't have a high pain threshold. I wasn't very athletic. But I think that's due to going through a lot of mental anguish in my life, a lot of adversity, because your mental and physical pain is linked to the same receptor. So I fully believe that people who go through many adverse points in their life, it toughens you up, it seasons you, so to speak.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, were you a scholar at school? Did you stick in? Did you come away with any qualifications?
I didn't actually. I missed my last year because I moved over to Ireland when I was, I think, 13 years old. 13 or 14, we moved over to Ireland. So by the time I come back to England, I'd missed too much of my coursework. So I couldn't get back into school. And I think that's where the trouble for me started. I kind of strayed away from everything and I started, my curiosity got the better of me, shall we say.
What was it like moving at that age then? I mean, it's got to have been difficult, especially, it's difficult moving at any age when you're a kid, but your teenage years, your formative years, and I mean, you'll have made friendships, etc. I mean, from your perspective, it must have been difficult.
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, because I was a very quiet guy as well, very quiet, withdrawn child. I was the same in my teenage years. Really, it was when I got to about 17, 18, as a lot of teenage lads do. I found substances. I found the party life, and things started to spiral from there. Really, but yeah, my school life was quiet, pretty uneventful, to be honest with you. It's been my adolescence where most things have picked up.
Yeah, I mean, moving across the island, did the whole family go? Was it just you and one of your parents? What was the situation, and why did you move?
Yeah, the whole of us went over. My mother, my father, and my 3 brothers, Adam, Alex, and Patrick. We all went over to Ireland. We moved to a place where my father was raised, Portadown, in the north of Ireland. Quite a rough place. We moved there, and then we moved to a place in County Down called Newcastle by the Irish coast. Now, that was a beautiful place. Sectarianism wasn't really prevalent there, so the Catholics and the Protestants, they got on, they mixed together. It was a nice little coastal town, and that was a beautiful place, mate. I'd go back there tomorrow.
What was it like with the kids? I mean, did the kids take to you as, living in this country and people coming into your area, sometimes they can cause problems. Was it like that for you?
It was a little bit rocky, I'll say. As soon as you speak and they hear the English accent, the thick Lancashire accent, It used to have a bit of stigma with it because obviously it more so in Portadown than in Newcastle. We had very few problems over there, but the first 3 to 4 months we spent in Portadown, that was hard adjusting for a lad as young as myself. But I say it was an experience. I'll say that much.
I read in one of the interviews that you did online about one of your brothers being bullied. What was the situation with that?
Yeah, that's correct. My eldest brother, I don't think he'll mind me mentioning him. Adam, my eldest brother, big gentle giant, very passive human being. He was bullied for quite a few years till it got that severe and progressive that he didn't do the last couple of years of high school. And obviously me as a young lad seeing that, not really being big enough or strong enough in my mind to do anything about it, it kind of affects you. But I looked at him and I thought, not me. So yeah, it's a lesson learned.
Was that in Ireland?
No, it wasn't, mate. No, it wasn't. That was back over here in England. Mate.
Okay, so obviously you're in Ireland. You leave school. What do you do when you leave school?
We left school and we came straight back over to England. I think we were all homesick teenage lads. We come straight back, which in hindsight, well, I thought at the time was a mistake, but obviously now with everything that's happened in my recent life, for everything a reason. But we came straight back. We left school, came straight back over to England. Like I say, I couldn't get into school over here because I'd missed too much of my coursework. And like I say, I think that's where things started to spiral for me. That's where I found recreational drugs. And that's where I started to be. I was always a good lad trying to be bad. That was always my thing, Steve, mate. I've never been a bad lad. And even when it comes to criminality, I've only ever been on the fringes. I've never been involved in heavy forms of criminality.
You've mentioned recreational drugs a few times. What was your first encounter with recreational drugs?
Cannabis. That was my first, cannabis. And then obviously from there you meet different people. You're on a different scene. You meet different people. There was obviously the drug culture was massive, the rave scene. And then I found ecstasy, MDMA.
So okay, you discover cannabis. Did somebody give you a joint? Did you go and buy it? What was the situation?
Do you know, if I can remember correctly, it was a friend of mine. He had some of the old resin. The old soap boy. I had some of that, and I think we made an old camp park, went onto a field somewhere, and that's where my first introduction to cannabis was.
Okay, and did you enjoy it? Did you like it?
I did. I'm actually a massive advocate of marijuana myself, mate. I did enjoy it. I had little brief stints where I smoked it, then I stopped smoking it, but yeah, I did enjoy it, mate. I won't lie.
I mean, alcohol as well. Was that something that you took to or not?
I've suffered with substance misuse problems most of my adolescence. If I'm being honest, I've been an alcoholic. I drank alcohol for a lot for 2 or 3 years, to the point where my health started deteriorating. Amphetamines as well. I got really bad on amphetamines, and last but not least, the devil itself, cocaine, which completely destroyed my life. But I take full accountability for that. And as I say, we'll probably elaborate on that later on in this interview.
Were you just chasing? Were you chasing a high, or you know? I mean, you take drugs because you want to get away from things. You know, maybe you escape from something for a couple of hours, and it's the same reason people drink. Although drink's probably the worst drug that's out there, and it's legal. But
it's legal.
But you take, you know, you're smoking cannabis to chill out, to get away from things for a few hours. Were you chasing a high, or was one thing not enough? What give us?
Yeah, I think it was just young and temperamental. You know, you're experimenting and you find one thing, and then your curiosity gets the better of you. Yeah, I think it was just young and temperamental, mate. But it can lead down some darker paths, can't it, depending on your personality and your capacity as a human being. But like I said, it was just I've suffered with substance misuse problems most of my adolescence. But I've found a way of channeling that now into other things. So I transmute that energy and I put it into more positive things. So I've got an addictive personality, mate. There's no escaping that. I'll be an addict till the day I die. It's I've got to make conscious efforts. You've got to reprogram your subconscious. Get up every day and make conscious efforts to better yourself.
Yeah, you were saying that you were on the fringes of crime. Was that to fund your addiction?
That was not. No, what happened there was, at the age of 25 and 26, I moved into a house with my little brother and a friend. I ended up, I'll cut a long story short, I ended up renting that house by myself. It was a 2-bedroom house. I was struggling to keep up with the payments, the maintenance, the bills. So I won't mention names. Somebody introduced me to an easier way to make money, shall we say. And to my shame, I went down that avenue. I'll just say I sold heroin, crack cocaine, and believe me, it's a horrible, nasty sewer of a game full of pond life. It's full of people that are materialistic. They're all chasing the money. They don't have any feelings about the community or the family, mate. That's what it boils down to. I sat with people that judge you on the value of the pair of trainers or the coat that you're wearing. That's the sort of individual that you're in within that game. But it was one of those things. To my shame, I did it. Certain circumstances before me. I was struggling to pay the bills. I put morals and principles to one side, and I went down a path that I wish I never went down. But I've got my cross to bear. My conscience is getting kicked daily from that. I told one story when I did the Darren G interview about being at a crack house where they used to wash the crack cocaine, and the gentleman who used to wash it was a crackhead. And while he's doing this, the children were banging on the door. They were hungry, and they were asking to be fed. Now, this is the reality of the situation. I've slipped out and give the kids some money and told them to go to the shop, because I knew that if he'd have knew they had the money, he'd have took it off them. But you can't unsee those things, Steve. Once you see them, mate, the depths of depravity and how far a human being is willing to go when he has that addiction, it stays with you for the rest of your days.
Yeah, the closest that most people get to that kind of scenario is watching Trainspotting, you know, and thinking, no, that could never happen. But ultimately, you've lived that life.
Yeah, I also had my brother was a heroin addict. He still is. So growing up, I saw that as well. There was another example there for me. That's why that's why it was a massive, huge compromise for me to go into that game, because I saw the damage that it did firsthand, Steve, to my brother, and still is doing, and doing to many other people in my community, along with cocaine. So, but there's nothing here. There's nothing in my community for them. I did open a gym over this way. It was very successful, but 2 floods hit it, and then COVID finished me off. But I'll be looking into maybe getting a community centre opened over here or funded for, because there's just nothing for anybody over here, mate. Nothing.
Well, for somebody who's sitting watching this who doesn't take drugs, why is heroin so addictive?
I think any opiate's addictive. I mean, I've seen it on different sides. My missus, my partner, Danielle, she got hooked on pregabalin. Now, that's a prescription drug, but that's legal nonetheless. So, but yeah, I think any opiate, from what I've seen, personal experience, any opiate is destructive. I think it slows your synapses down in your brain. It's giving you that feeling of euphoria. It's like, I think many heroin users said, like a warm blanket slipping over them. You know, it's that feeling, but it's just dangerous, mate. It ruins lives. It ruins lives.
I guess with drugs, you know, and I've mentioned it before, you know, back in the day, I took recreational drugs when I was a kid and when I was younger, and you know, you never get that initial high the second time, third time round, do you? No. Ecstasy was a huge part of the culture that I grew up in, and as was cannabis and tack and whatever you want to call it, but ultimately, I think you're always chasing that initial high, and you never get it. And heroin, by the sounds of it, and I've never took heroin, but heroin sounds like the ultimate high, and it sounds like once you have that first one, you're constantly trying to, you know, chase the dragon, as it was called, probably. And that's
the term. Yeah, I've never ventured down that path, but like I said, I've seen it firsthand, so I know the damage that it can do. But it's not something I'd ever care to venture on that ground, mate. Very, very dangerous and a very slippery slope, and a lifelong battle, from what I can see.
Did you wake yourself up quite quickly in that situation when you saw the people that you were dealing with, when you were having to, you know, to go down that road to pay the bills? Did you wake up quite quickly, or were you in that for a while?
I was in that rut for a while. I tried to commit suicide. This is where the pivotal point, the transitional moment was for me. I got that bad on cocaine that I wasn't even using it socially. I was getting £500 worth of cocaine, taking it back to my place and taking it to myself. It got that bad that one night I had a couple of sleeping tablets on the side on my cupboard. I had a bottle of wine and half a bottle of vodka in my fridge. I necked the lot, took the sleeping tablets. That was after being up all night on cocaine, hoping that it had finished the job. Lucky for me, I'm still here and one of God's chosen few. I managed to survive that. And from there, mate, I knew it was now or never. I was 20, going on 27 years old. I didn't have the greatest CV. I'd wasted a lot of years. And I just knew. I remember when I was out, because I remember I woke up face down in my own vomit, in my boxers and my socks, not having a clue what had gone on. And I was looking at a picture of my dad. My dad's no longer with me. Died of cancer 10 years ago in September, another pivotal moment in my life. And I remember thinking of my dad, and I just thought, no more. And there was a little thing that he said to me before he passed. He came into the house, he walked past me, he went to the kitchen door, and as he went to open the kitchen door, he stopped. And it always sticks with me, this, Steve. He stopped and he slowly turned around and he looked at me and he said, "Make me proud, son." And that always stuck in my head, because when he was this side of life, I failed him. And it's something that my brother once said to me, to disgrace somebody when they're alive is one thing, but to disgrace them in death is another. So that's why you will never catch me doing that. And that's why I do what I do today, and I fight in his memory. So, yeah.
Yeah. How did you get out of this, this cycle? I mean, you're dealing, you're taking recreational drugs, by your own account, you're in a low place. I mean, I read as well, you became homeless.
That's correct. That is correct. Yeah, I was sleeping on benches. I actually at one point ended up in my friend's shed. I would sneak into my friend's shed at night just to get some warmth. It was a hard time, really hard time. That went on for a couple of months. And then a gentleman who is brothers with my brother's fiance, Phil Bleasdale. I'll give him a brief mention on the last podcast I did. Massive shout out to that man. He took me into his house. He turned his kitchen into a gym for me. And the ball started rolling from there, my friend. And he helped me out, got me back on my feet, restored my faith in humanity. And the rest is history, mate.
Tell us about that first night on the streets. Then, I mean, how did you end up there? And tell us about that first night. What did you feel like? Oh,
it was horrible, mate. I couldn't pay me rent. I had to leave my property. Can you still hear me, Steve?
Yes, I can, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to leave my property. I couldn't pay my rent. And at that time, I'd upset a lot of people. I'd burnt a lot of bridges, so I didn't have many places to go. So I got myself into that mess. I had to get myself out of it, but I got a little help from a friend. But everyone had turned their backs on me, to be honest, mate, and I don't blame them. I was robbing people. I was doing all sorts, mate. You lose all self-respect when you're on that stuff. I mean, I've seen it turn stronger men than me into mush. It's not nice. It's not nice. But I basically got out of it. I got myself out of the rut. I started training, which is an absolute godsend. I know it sounds cliched, Steve, but boxing saved my life. Boxing saved my life. A funny little story, actually. It was I was in my friend's Phil, the fella that took me in, and his computer, his motherboard was broken, and he were getting it fixed. And when he's fixed it and he's started the computer up again, all the tabs, the original tabs, were open at the top, and the Facebook tab was there. So I said to him, "Can you click on that, and I'll log into my Facebook?" As he's done that, he was scrolling down, and I've just caught it out the corner of my eye. I was making a cup of tea for him, and I just caught a small little square picture, and I recognised the face on the picture. It was Sean Smith. You'll be familiar with Sean Smith, runs UBKB. And I said he was applying for bare knuckle fighters. And I applied at 27 years old with no experience whatsoever. Last time I laced up a pair of gloves was messing about as a 6-year-old child. So, yeah, I messaged him. And fair play to Sean and his missus, because with no credentials, no experience at all, them two took me in and gave me a shot. And from there, I've managed to build up a decent little career and some decent credentials for myself. So, yeah, I'm forever grateful for that.
Had you boxed as a youngster?
No, nothing, mate. Absolutely nothing, Steve. No amateur experience. I'd never stepped foot in a gym till I was 27 years old. I was self-taught as well for the first 10 months, which was really hard, because what happens there is you hardwire a lot of bad habits into yourself when you're self-taught, and it's hard to shake them. So, but I did really well. And 5.5 years, I think it is now, I've been boxing. I've won 3 unlicensed titles, 2 bare knuckle titles, and I'm now going professional as a boxer. So I've done quite well.
Let's go back to that very first fight. Then you say you boxed unlicensed. Tell us about that very first fight. Who was it against?
My first fight was actually bare knuckle.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a bare knuckle fight for Sean and Amanda. I fought. He's now a friend of mine, Joseph Samuel Clark. He's a 2-weight bare knuckle champion. It was a very close fight. I felt like I probably could have got the draw. Looking back though, I was very inexperienced. I was a little bit gun shy, and he was the aggressor. He pushed the fight, but I think I'm the only person he hasn't TKO'd, apart from his one loss to John Spencer. I think I'm the only person he hasn't TKO'd. But big shout out to Joseph Samuel Clark. He's an absolute gentleman. But yeah, my first fight was against Joseph Samuel Clark. I think he lives in Spain originally, from Doncaster, if I'm not mistaken.
What's the difference between unlicensed and bare knuckle, just for people who don't know?
Right, the difference is, well, originally the bandages were still being incorporated into, I think most firms, if not all, if I'm not mistaken, have removed the bandages now, so it is actually bare knuckle. The difference being, bare knuckle is actually safer than glove boxing. Now, I'm going pro as a boxer, so you know what I mean. But it is because when you spread the surface area out, you put the glove on someone's hand, you take that serration away of the knuckles, and you spread the surface area out. And so when you're getting hit with the shot with that glove on, and it's flattened out and spreading the surface area out, it's actually worse for your brain, because you can absorb the shot, you can absorb the pounds of pressure better, and you can take a shot. So the constant reverberation of your brain rocking inside your skull, that's how you get pugilist syndrome, punch drunk. That's where that comes from. And obviously you're in the ring for a longer period of time when you're fighting glove, whereas bare knuckle, you're not. So it is actually, believe it or not, it sounds daft, it is actually a safer sport than glove boxing, but I suppose it's pick your poison.
Yeah. Okay, so your first fight didn't go that well, although you could have got a result out of it. What was your second fight?
My second fight was a week later. I fought a week later in a 5-round fight against a gentleman named Brent Dorney. Good fighter, very experienced. He's had a couple more fights than me. I won that fight. I wasn't expected to win that fight, like most of the fights I've been in, but I won that fight. From there, I went on I think it was a 2-fight win streak. I won a couple of fights on the trot, but then I slipped into what you call journeyman mode, where you take fights on short notice against anybody. For a purse, for the experience. I just love testing myself. And I slipped into journeyman mode, which it wasn't really me. I was losing fights that I could have won. I was bad performances, so I had to go back to the drawing board. But yeah, my second fight and third fight was gloved, and I've had 8 bare knuckle now and 16 gloved, if I'm not mistaken. I might have to count there, mate.
Yeah, it's still quite impressive. And I mean, going on the road is tough. I mean, is the money in BKB, better than it is in the unlicensed? I mean, I promoted the unlicensed in the Northeast. In fact, I started it off in the Northeast and promoted it for 7 years before I went professional. But
brilliant! I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did 7 years. I worked. I set the EBF up for Spencer up in the Northeast, and it was a big success. I did my very first show at the Felon Social Club, which is no longer there. I had John Davison top of the bill. He had a farewell fight. Gary Furby boxed on that
the
one.
governor, Gary, top bloke, top fighter, yeah.
Yeah, but it was a hell of a show. It was 400 capacity, we had 500 in. It was absolutely bouncing. And I went on to do 38 white collar shows, unlicensed shows up in the Northeast.
Yeah. Did you ever have Jimmy McCrory on there? Sorry for interrupting you, mate.
Yeah, he boxed a couple of times on my shows. To be honest, him going into the bare knuckle was the right thing for him to do. The EBF shows didn't quite suit him. I didn't think he was a good boxer though. You could see he had talent. He always brought a crowd. But when he really made his name, obviously in the bare knuckle, in the bare knuckle stuff. Correct. But Gary Furby, I mean, I had him on down at shows in London with Joe Pyle. He won the governor title down there. Roy Shaw presented him with a belt. So I had some great times. I love the unlicensed, and I think it's a good. I think the unlicensed and the bare knuckle is a good little breeding ground. If you haven't had an amateur career, it's a good way it's a good way of seeing whether you're capable of doing it. You know, tell
Well,
us about. Go on. I was
I
going to
was
say,
just
tell us
about
about
to
the
say this.
training. Go on.
It's now they've got because back in the the grassroots yourself is very important for the fundamentals of boxing, but now, as you've noticed, there's quite an emergence of unlicensed fighters turning over into the pro game, just as many as the amateurs. So, like you said, I think it is a good breeding ground for talent. As long as they're looked after well, they're guarded well, and they put in the work, which is the most important thing. But yeah, there's a lot of good fighters coming from the unlicensed. So I think, was it Fabio Wardley? I think he's doing really well now in the pro ranks, and he came from the unlicensed scene. Levi Dunn, shout out to Levi, stable mate of mine. He just fought Campbell Hatton at the weekend. And he came from the BKB and unlicensed. In fact, I think he fought on Sean Smith's show on one of the same cards as me. So, yeah, there's a lot of good talent coming through the unlicensed ranks as well as the amateur ranks.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see more of them do it because I think, you know, coming from the game that you're in, you know, there's some really tough guys, and I mean, they obviously keep you obviously keep yourself fit, you know, and obviously train as do the other guys. But you know, in the BKB, you have to be very technical as well, you know, because you know the trick is not to stay in there too long. You know what I mean? You want to try and get your opponent out of there as quickly as possible. Otherwise, if you're going to get hit with a bare knuckle, it's going to hurt. I want to ask you about the training. What's the training like? I mean, is that something you can dedicate a great deal of time to? Because, you know, it's not a full-time job. You haven't got massive sponsors, I wouldn't imagine. And, you know, is that something you dedicate a lot of time to, the training?
Yeah, it is. It is, my friend. Usually, I've got a job or a part-time job on the side just to keep the income and the cash flow going. But it's hard. You can't work full-time and go professional in the boxing game. You wouldn't be able to dedicate your time to it. The levels of fitness in the professional game, it's a different level. The unlicensed game, I'm not saying it's got a bit of a bad reputation, but you can cut corners. What I will say is in the unlicensed game, you can cut corners. You don't have to live the life. The pro game, you cannot cut corners. It is a different level. But the training, I train insanely hard. I go to Rochdale 3 days a week. I train twice a day, 4 times a week. I think I have 1 day off. Sometimes I don't even have that off. It is intense. It takes its toll on the body, but mentally, there's not one aspect of this game I don't enjoy, mate. I really do love getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and doing my road work, going to the gym. I absolutely love it, mate. And you're winning in life if you can do something that you love.
Yeah, and you're keeping yourself clean and you're keeping yourself fit, and that and you know, healthy body, healthy mind as well is a big thing.
Indeed, Steve.
BKB, is it something? And I asked Stu Armstrong this when I interviewed him a few days ago. Is this something you can see getting bigger and better? Do you think it's going to go mainstream? Because
100%.
Yeah, MMA obviously did do that, and I remember I was working the doors. I mean, you're talking 15 years ago now when MMA probably broke through, and I remember the doorman on one of the bars I was working saying, that's the end of boxing. Boxing's not going to be here for much longer. MMA is going to take over, and they know I'm a boxing fan. And I said, no, boxing will always be there. Boxing's been around a long, long time. It'll be alongside it, and I'm sure MMA will do well, and I'm sure it's something that will be here for a while. But I'd seen K1 come and go. I'd seen there's various disciplines that have come and gone. But you know, MMA has lasted the distance, and I'm just wondering whether BKB can get to that same kind of level, because it is getting TV coverage now.
Yeah, we're actually at the BFBA. We've got some big things. I'll not disclose that yet because nothing's set in stone. But we've got some big things. We're putting some big things in place at the minute. If you look at it, you can compare it to the emergence of UFC and MMA. If you look, I think it was, I don't know how many states it was still illegal in America years after it had come to fruition. So, I do think that BKB will eventually land there. I'm not sure if it'll compete with the revenue and the numbers of the other two sports and disciplines. But if you look at BKBTM as well, that's another bare knuckle promotion out there at the minute. They're doing really well, and they've took it right out of the dark ages and they've brought it into the light, and they're doing a good job with it as well at the minute. Between all the promoters out there doing a really good job and legitimising the sport, getting governing bodies on board, I think between all the promoters out there working hard at it, it can get to a really exciting level. Which level, it remains to be seen yet, my friend, but I think it'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously see yourself as a bit of a counter fighter. Yeah, you like to go on the back foot, pick your shots, but
100%.
you used to overthink. You said in an interview that I read.
Yeah, that was correct, my friend. Yeah, I used to overthink it. The psychological aspects of the sport are more important than the physical. A third of it is physical. You have to be in good shape. But what I come to learn was this has to be right. If that's not right, then you might as well just be a dead vessel in there. You've got to be alert, sharp, focused, and you've got to have tunnel vision. You can't be angry. Anger's acid in boxing. But yeah, I found that the psychological aspects were most important. Mental fortitude. I'm on a different level now, physically and mentally, which will be seen when I make my pro debut. As I say, I've cut a lot of corners. All my performances are on YouTube. Some of them are lackluster. Some of them are under par. Some of them are really good. But like I said, this is the only time in my 5.5 years boxing where I've stayed absolutely consistent. A nice snap of one of my bare knuckle wins there. That was one of my finest performances.
Yeah, who was that against?
That was against a gentleman named Ryan Flatley Roberts from Bolton. Big shout out. Like I say, most of the lads that you fight in the bare knuckle game and the unlicensed game, to be fair, you remain friends with afterwards. So yeah, he was called Ryan Flatley Roberts. I think I'm the only person to have beat him. I think.
Just looking at the shorts there, the Irish is clearly in evidence. Is that something that you're proud of, the Irish heritage, or the other side of those shorts in Burnley's colours?
No, I'm just the green, white, and gold, Steve. I'm very proud Irish Republican. Like I was raised by a God-fearing mother and father, but my dad was a very, very proud Irish Republican, and I always made a promise to him that I'd fly the colours proud in anything I did. So that's what I do, Steve. Yeah, very proud Irish Republican.
Yeah, I mean, I guess TV coverage is the key, really, if BKB is going to fly. And I mean, there's been a few documentaries. I think my first introduction to bare knuckle was James Quinn McDonough's programme Knuckle, which was given prime TV. It was BBC One documentary.
Yeah.
I've still got that somewhere. And James is a good pal of mine. And James had approached me just as I'd turned pro to ask if I would help, establish BKB in the Northeast, but wasn't for me. I'd already made that decision to go down the pro route. But he seems to have done quite well, and that kind of program must have influenced a lot of people to take up the sport again.
Yeah, it will have done, mate. It will have done. Which one was that now? Which documentary was that?
Knuckle. It was on BBC One.
It was Knuckle. Yeah, it was. I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was it spanning over 10 years? I believe it was.
So, yeah, it was. I mean, what really stood out about that documentary was it was like how the traveling men were making like videos, and they had these two warring families, and there were videotapes were being delivered to different campsites. They were putting the video on, and then they were up doing the challenges, and it was, if I remember rightly, it was the Joyces and the Quinns. I think
the Joyces and that's correct, mate. Big Joe Joyce and the Quinns. Yeah, it was. It was very entertaining. I think if you notice, after that, that's when it started to build. I think that was the very first building block, was that DVD. If I'm not mistaken, I remember the months following that. That's when certain promotions started to emerge. I think it legitimised it, that documentary, at least in a few people's minds. But it was really entertaining. I liked it. I think at that point, when I watched it, it wasn't even a glimmer in my eye, the bare knuckle game. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And there was another documentary as well that I first seen. I think it was Vice. It was a Vice documentary. Jimmy McCrory featured on that with Aaron Gordon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really good documentary as well. It showed that most fighting men, they come from different walks of life, all from the working class background mostly. But yeah, I thought that was a good provocative watch.
Is that where he ended up fighting for the title against the American at Dave Courtney's house?
It was, God rest him, Jason Young. Yeah, he fought Jason Young and at Dave Courtney's house. That's correct, mate. Yeah. I think he's no longer with us, Jason. But yeah, that was he made history in that moment, didn't he?
Yeah, Dave Courtney's house. It's a funny old place. Well worth a visit if you ever get the opportunity.
I bet it is.
Oh, it is, mate. It is, and certainly a good place for boxing in his back garden. That's for certain. Yeah, tell us a little bit about, we've talked a little bit about the training. Tell us about the coaches that you've worked with and who you're working with now.
Well, I've been about a little bit, mate. But the coaches that I've actually settled with and spent any sustainable time with, my first coach and mentor was a gentleman named Baz Neal. He was a former professional MMA fighter. He after my first bare knuckle fight in Nottingham, Colwick Hall, yeah, that's where it was. He approached me in the changing rooms. He saw my performance. I think he's seen a lot of heart, and he said, "Listen, you've got something new, mate. Come down to my gym in Bolton, and we'll see what we can do with you." And I ended up spending nearly 2 years with that man. I lived on gym floors for weeks at a time, staying away from family. Them pictures you put up about 5 minutes ago, that was leading up to that. I was literally living in the gym, Steve. I was not out of the gym. I didn't see my missus. I didn't see my family. But that's the conducive environment you need to produce champions and winners. But yeah, Baz Neal was my first coach. After that, I think I kind of started going to different gyms, place to place. I never really settled until I found what I call now my church, which is run by Mick Mulcahy and Curtis Gargano, who are my coaches and mentors at the minute, and two top fellas, mate. Their energy is second to none. They facilitate for journeymen and prospects, and they're just two top blokes, mate, and I can see me having a decent career under those two gentlemen.
Yeah. I mean, BKB, again, not legal. I remember that I had to essentially sit down with a counsel and a representative from the local police each time I put an unlicensed show on. Is that the same for BKB?
We had to do the same. We had no problems with it because it isn't actually illegal. It's just not licensed. But we had no problems. I sat down with the council representatives. I sat down with the local police chief. They checked the fight list to make sure that there was no outstanding warrants for any of the fighters on the fight card. But our shows, we did 3 in 9 months, which is not easy to do. I challenge anyone to do that. We did 3 shows in 9 months. We sold one of them out. They got better as they went along, and we had absolutely no trouble. So for anybody who thinks any stigma attached to bare knuckle, there were actually no trouble there whatsoever, which previous shows and promoters couldn't say the same. But yeah, we did 3 shows in 9 months, but there wasn't any trouble getting staging them shows. I don't believe other promoters have it as easy. I think up here in Lancashire, we might be 10 years behind everybody else. But yeah, we had no trouble with it because like a lot of people are under the impression it's illegal. It actually is not. It's just unlicensed.
I presume you have to go through the same kind of regulations as boxing. Are you usually within like a 3-mile radius of a hospital, and do you get people to take public liability insurance out and that kind of thing?
Yeah, you've got to get those things sorted. I'm sure there's promoters who don't do those things, but God forbid if anything happened in the venue and they didn't have public liability insurance. You've got to be insured. You've got to be above board. You can't cut corners. I mean, I lost out on my first show. I had to put my hand in my pocket. And make sacrifices, but then it slowly started to build. But I'm not driven by money. I'm not a money motivated man. I'm wealthy. I'm wealthy in principles and morals, Steve. So it depends how you measure wealth. If you measure it by material wealth, then material goods, then no, I'm not that wealthy. But I'm wealthy in other ways, more figuratively, my friend.
Obviously you mentioned promoting. Did you find that, an enjoyable side of things, or do you prefer just to be in the ring throwing the punches?
I took to it like a duck to water, mate. So this game, I just I enjoy every aspect of it. I even tried my hand at coaching when I opened the gym over here that I mentioned earlier. And because over the course of time, the 4 years, at that point it had been 4 years I'd been in the game, I'd picked up quite a lot of knowledge about the fundamentals of boxing. So I thought I'll pass that on to the next generation. So that's when I opened the gym. But I like the coaching aspect. I like PTing. I like promoting. I like fighting. I love every aspect of it, mate. But I took to it surprisingly well. I live and breathe the game, mate. When I'm matchmaking, I study 3-4 hours a day. I study matchmaking. I'm very thorough when I put the matches together. Yeah, I just love every aspect of it, Steve.
Yeah, I'm quite clear to hear that when you're talking about it. For BKB, is it ticket deals, or do you tend to pay your fighters a wage when you're promoting a show?
That can differ depending on circumstances. The current climate as it stands now, it's going to be ticket deals. That's due to not having full capacities in venues, whereas before we would pay them a purse. We would pay them a fixed purse.
Yeah, it's interesting that because, certainly like the small hall pro shows that we do in the Northeast, it's ticket deals. It's back in the day, it used to be signed contracts and stuff, but it's the only way you can do it, unfortunately. And it is becoming more increasingly difficult. Are the overheads to put a show on as big? I mean, to put a small hall show on for me to do a pro show, let's say six fights.
I would say so.
It's 5.5, 6 grand.
Yeah, the purses in the bare knuckle game will budge that number up because, like I say, the purses are bigger in the bare knuckle game, which is understandable with double the risk that they're taking. Well, like I said, that's only superficial damage. The internal damage in boxing is worse. The external damage, it's more superficial. It looks nastier, cuts, big welts and hematomas. But as I say, I got off subject there, my friend. But yeah, the overheads are pretty similar. They're pretty similar. There's not a vast difference between them.
Something that is different, I suppose, and again, I've seen you quoted about this, but brain damage. I would have always thought that being hit without a glove was probably going to cause you a bit more damage. But I remember, I've got the quote here: brain damage and pugilist syndrome is less likely to happen in BKB. Gloves absorb a lot of pressure, which means fighters take more clean shots, meaning more punishment. There's definitely less sustained damage in BKB. Is that something that you've read or something you've heard of?
No, I think that was something I said, weren't it? If I think
it was, yeah.
That was something. Well, obviously, personal experience as well. Through personal experience, through being in the ring myself, I've never gone home after a bare knuckle fight with a banging headache or a mild concussion. I've had many spars in the ring where I've gone home and your head's a bit muddled, your thinking's a bit muddled, you feel like you're mildly concussed. But as I've said before, mate, pick your poison. It is literally, they're both dangerous sports. You could get knocked down by a bus tomorrow, mate. We know that. So it's pick your poison. Both sports are entertaining. They're both dangerous, but both individuals know that, don't they, before they step into the ring.
Who are your heroes then in the ring? I mean, or anybody who you would say you styled yourself on?
I wouldn't say I styled myself on anybody, but I love Hector Camacho. He was a monster. I love Emmanuel Augustus, the dancing boxer. He actually gave Floyd Mayweather more trouble than anybody else, but that fight kind of goes off the radar, and people usually remember the Cotto performance or the Castillo one. But yeah, Floyd Mayweather, I love his defensive genius, cat-like reflexes, his lateral movement and timing is absolutely amazing. My heroes in the bare knuckle game is none other than Jimmy Sweeney. That man is my BKB idol. Also fights in memory of his father, and that is some man indeed. Yeah, but they're my fighting idols, shall we say?
Yeah, no, good stuff. From your perspective, I guess with COVID, it has put a little bit of a stop to it. Have you found it difficult to keep the momentum going, keep training, and I suppose not get sucked back into your old ways?
Well, do you know something? That's what that's been really hard. It's good you mentioned that, Steve, because I was gonna allude to that. But at first, the lockdown, it hit me hard. I'm not gonna lie, mate. I went through a bit of a bad time. Started drinking a little bit again. Substance misuse problems crept back in. Nothing serious. I knocked it on the head pretty fast when I realised that I was spiralling that way. And I had nothing going for me, mate. It hit me really hard because it went from fighting all the time, promoting, having a gym, to having absolutely nothing. So yeah, it hit me hard. It hit me really hard. I was lost for quite a few months, but then it went from having nothing to having absolutely everything. And a lot of offers started falling on the table. I was appointed the UBA representative, the England representative. I was appointed owner and co-founder of the BFBA Lancashire sector for the bare knuckle. Which is also now on ice because I'm going professional as a boxer. All this happened in the space of a couple of weeks. But I'm a very goal-oriented person and I need something to chase and to achieve, or else I do feel lost. But I've got plenty of plates being spun at the minute, mate. I've got my fingers in a few pies, but I'm working hard day to night. I'm up at 5 in the morning. I'm in bed at 12 at night. So I get 5 to 6 hours roughly a night, and I'm on it. The early bird catches the morning worm, as they say.
Good stuff. So why turn to pro now? Why? I mean, obviously you say you're driven, you're ambitious, you like something to push you. Is that the reason?
Yeah, well, what it is, mate, it's an opportunity that I don't think I can miss out on. My style, if I'm being honest, is more suited to boxing. I'm a boxer. I'm not a brawler. I've done quite well. I've won as many fights bare knuckle as I've lost. I've won a couple of titles. But if I'm being honest, my style is more suited to boxing, and I'm quite a good boxer. I'm quite a competent, efficient boxer, and I'm only getting better. And the coach I'm with now, Curtis Gargano, told me to come down. He took a look at me. My fitness levels were not at the peak, but they're getting there now, and I think he liked what he saw. and the rest is history. I dedicated myself. I committed myself to him in the gym. I've been down there. I haven't missed a session. And I'm just committed to the game, mate. And hopefully I'll get to make my pro debut in the summertime.
Yeah, good stuff. I mean, who's training you for your pro career?
That's Curtis Gargano. He's the man who oversees. He manages me and he's my coach as well. An absolute top-class man. His energy, as I said before, is second to none, mate. The energy the man puts into the sport, into his lads, the opportunities he gets his lads. I mean, you only have to see him when he's in the corner on BT Sports, when you see him cornering the lads. You only have to see his energy and the way he is with the lads. You know what I mean? He's top draw, mate. And I've just found my place. As soon as I went there, I just loved the energy. The lads were very accepting of me. They all work hard. There's no cutting corners, no nonsense. And that's what I love, mate. It's not too far for me to travel. And I found my church, mate, so I'm happy.
Is the aim to progress as a home fighter, or are you going to go on the road?
No, I'm going to go on the road, mate. I'm going to be a general. I'm nearly 33. I'm 33 July 1st, Steve. So I've got to be a realist. I'm never going to be British champion, but dare to dream, dare to dream. But I'm tough as all boots, and anyone can tell you this who sparred me or anybody that has overseen me working. I am a very, very tough, durable individual, and very mentally strong. So I think I'll be suited to the journeyman game. Plus, I've got 6 little girls at home, so I've got a family to feed, mate. And fighting once every 3 months just doesn't cut it for me.
What weight are you going in at?
70 kilograms. I'm coming down to 70 kilograms. I'll be a very strong super welterweight. At the minute, I'm a middleweight.
Super welter, okay. You kind of drop. Well, it'll be interesting to see because I've got Jeff Saunders coming back. We might be able to get you a fight.
Hey, that might be one for the part one, mate. That might be one.
Jeff's making his comeback. You never know. I've got Ellis Corey, who's a welterweight, and I've got Ant Ormsby as well. So I've got a few in and around your weight. You never know.
Yeah.
You might
Good on you, Steve.
Seamus.
Maybe, my friend. That would be an absolute pleasure, mate. An absolute pleasure.
Last opportunity, really, just for you to promote anything that you want to promote, mate, before we finish.
No problem. I just want to give a shout out to Mick's Gym, to Curtis and Mick, to my missus and my 6 kids, my brothers, Alex, Adam, Patrick, my close friends, the people that are around me at the minute, Brendan Collins, Corey Harrison. I want to give a shout out to them, my sponsors, J. Sykes and Sons, Declan McKenna, one of my most consistent sponsors, an absolute gentleman, a legend, very helpful. He runs a firm called Upright Scaffolding. Willow Carpets and Vinyls, run by Daniel Alderson. I've actually forgot the roofing firm. Carl Winder, shout out to Carl Winder, another one of my sponsors who runs a roofing firm. And I'd like to give a shout out to a gentleman from up your way who I correspond with recently quite a bit, an absolute gentleman and a devout Catholic, Shane Taylor. The absolute legend of a man. I've been corresponding with him recently, and the man's really, really inspiring me. And as you'll know his story yourself, it's well publicised. I just wanted to give that man a shout out because he's an absolute legend and a sincere gentleman. Yeah,
good stuff, mate. Excellent. Well, look, I wish you all the best with your journey into the pros. It's a cracking story and been great to hear from you. I've got to give my sponsors a shout out as well. So it's a big shout out to Skips and Bins. Telephone them on 0800 254 5253. Enquiries at skipsandbins.com. Get onto their website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract, free and pay as you go waste collection. A big shout out to Spider VPN as well, who do great stuff with internet security. They've sponsored us for the last 4 months. qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend and Newcastle, and to Jab Signature for all your boxing gear. And if you're a first-time visitor at the channel, subscribe, hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner, hit the like button, the little thumb, click share to social media, and drop into the comment section if you want to leave a comment, positive about or negative about the video. It's completely up to you. And hit the Spotify, iTunes, Podbean to listen if you're out for a walk and you miss watching it on live. And that completes my sponsors. But Seamus, been an absolute pleasure, mate. Glad to get you on.
Absolute pleasure. I just want to thank you, mate, for the opportunity to tell my story and elaborate a bit more in depth. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Although it be virtually, it's been a pleasure to get acquainted with you, and hopefully we can meet somewhere down the line, my friend.
Fingers crossed. John Justice Allen says, good luck with what you do, Seamus. Passion comes through. I'm sure you will hit your goals. Jamie Little says the same. Good man. I can see
God bless.
proper passion. And Brian Heppel says 33 is not too young, Seamus. So there you go. Plenty of good wishes. Plenty of good wishes from all of our viewers. But absolute pleasure, mate. Take care and speak to you soon.
Thank you. God bless, my brother. Take care,
God bless
mate.
you, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Steve.